We're going to use example 7-14 in the book to illustrate the incremental rate of return analysis method and also make sure that you understand the concept behind it. We have two projects and we need to choose one of the two projects. They're mutually exclusive. The first one has a first cost of $200 and a uniform annual benefit of $95. It has a useful life of 6 years, and at the end of that there is a salvage value of $50. The second project costs a lot more. It's $700. It has a uniform annual benefit of $120 and a useful life of 12 years. At the end of the 12 years we have a salvage value of $150. In order to do this appropriately, we need to have the same analysis period. And so with the least common multiple concept, if we repeat project X 2 times the repeated project assumption, we will have a useful life of 12 years. So what you see on the left is project X for done twice, 6 years each, with a salvage value of $50 at the end of each of the 6 years and a first cost of $200 at the beginning of each 6-year period. First of all, let's take a look at what the rate of return would be for each of those projects. And let me add that we're going to use a minimum attractive rate of return of 10% for this analysis. So getting back to project X, if we use the rate of return, internal rate of return function in Excel, I can click on below the column that has the totals of all of the annual costs, including the initial investments, the annual benefits, and the salvage values. If I click on that cell to use for that, at the bottom of the column, up in the formula bar, I see the internal rate of return function. And it's using cash flows from cell H2 to H14, and it calculates a 43.3% rate of return. Then if I look at project Y and do the same thing, I only have one useful life to contend with, the 12-year useful life. If I use the internal rate of return function, I get 14.3%. Now either of those, both of those are above the 10% minimum attractive rate of return. However, we're not done with incremental analysis. We can't just pick the highest one. We have to take a look at the increment in order to adequately make this analysis. To get the increment, we subtract the cash flows from the lowest first cost project from the highest first cost project. So the lowest cost project is $200 in the first year, the highest one being $700. So if we subtract the costs from project X from the cost of project Y, we get the incremental costs. And so the column shown in green, we have minus 500 for the first year. That's minus 700 minus a minus 200. And if I want, I can create a cell that shows the formula and then just drag it down to complete all of the other cash flows. Now I want to find the rate of return for that increment. If I use the internal rate of return function, I get a rate of return on that column of cash flows at 1.3%. The incremental rate of return methodology says that if the rate of return on the increment is greater than the minimum attractive rate of return, we go with the higher cost increment. If it's lower than the minimum attractive rate of return, we go with the lower cost increment. So 1.3% is less than 10%. Since it's less than the minimum attractive rate of return, we go with the lower cost alternative, which is project X. Now, I will admit that had we chosen the highest rate of return between the two, we would have also chosen project X. However, sometimes that's not the case. So what exactly are we doing with incremental rate of return? We're looking at this increment, this difference, and asking ourselves, is it worth it for me to go from the $200 initial investment project to the $700 initial cost project? What do I get for my additional $500 that I invest? Now, I will admit that project Y does exceed the minimum attractive rate of return. However, what I'm getting for my extra $500 are these incremental benefits and costs, and the rate of return on my $500 extra investment is only 1.3%. That's not desirable. What I really could do, and what incremental analysis is all about, is saying, look, if I can't get at least the minimum attractive rate of return on the increment, I should go with the lower cost alternative and take my extra $500 and invest it in something that I can get 10% or more in, because the assumption is that the company can get the minimum attractive rate of return on any money that they want to invest. So let me summarize. You cannot just take the rate of return of each of your alternatives and pick the highest one, because you will not be getting the minimum attractive rate of return on all of your potential investments. Thank you.